The 911 operator heard 3 words before the line went dead. What followed was a 14-year manhunt across 6 countries. But the most disturbing part: the killer had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. The victim, a 34-year-old schoolteacher named Eleanor Hart, was last seen walking home from a bookstore in Portland, Oregon, on April 12, 1989. Her body was found 3 days later in a remote forest, 20 miles outside the city. Eleanor Hart lived in a modest red brick apartment on 17th Avenue, where neighbors described her as the kind of person who'd stop to help a stray cat cross the street. Colleagues at Lincoln High School called her the Quiet Storm, a teacher who memorized students' favorite books and stayed after class to rewrite college essays for kids who'd never written one. On the day of her disappearance, she left her apartment at 6:45 p.m., carrying a paper bag from the East Side Cafe, humming The Rose as she walked past the boarded-up storefronts of Portland's gentrifying East Side neighborhood. Witnesses at the downtown library saw her pause to adjust a book on a shelf, her hands steady, her face lit by the glow of a street lamp. Her body was discovered on April 15, 1989, buried in a shallow grave near a rusted 1972 Buick in a forest owned by Victor Lang, a reclusive developer with a history of buying land on the city's outskirts. The scene showed no signs of a struggle, but her hands were bound with a braided rope later found in Lang's garage, its fibers matching the tarp that wrapped her body. The plastic sheeting, marked with a faded logo from a local auto shop, bore no fingerprints, and the lack of DNA evidence left investigators grasping at shadows. A single strand of dark brown hair, found tangled on her wrist, would later become the case's most haunting clue. Detectives from the Portland Police Department zeroed in on Victor Lang, a 58-year-old reclusive developer with a history of purchasing remote land. His alibi for the night of the murder, a church fundraiser attended by 200 people, was corroborated by security footage and a single witness, a choir director who swore Lang left the event at 9:15 p.m. The garage search yielded nothing: no bloodstains, no tools, no signs of a struggle. The braided rope, later identified as a common household item sold at a local hardware store, was dismissed by the lead detective, James Carter, as not a forensic priority. Forensic analysis of Eleanor's body revealed no DNA from the killer, a gap that would haunt the case for decades. The tarp wrapping her corpse was traced to a batch used by a defunct auto shop, Riverside Auto, which had closed in 1987. No fingerprints or tool marks were found on the plastic, and the lack of biological evidence left investigators with no clear path forward. A single strand of dark brown hair tangled on Eleanor's wrist was submitted to the lab but misclassified as uncommon in a 1989 report. Lab technician Margaret O'Reilly noted the hair's texture was not typical of baldness, a detail overlooked despite Lang's known baldness. Portland PD's internal memo from May 1989 stated, "No physical evidence links Lang to the crime. Proceed with closure." But one officer, Sergeant Elaine Torres, flagged the hair strand's inconsistency in her notes. Why would a bald man's hair be on the victim? This needs re-examination. Her concern was buried in the case file, lost amid bureaucratic inertia. By 1991, the case was officially deemed unsolvable, its threads frayed by missteps that would later be called systemic failures in a 2021 review of cold cases. The killer's fingerprints, if any, had never been found. The rope, if ever used, had never been matched, and the hair, ignored, misread, forgotten, would remain a ghost in the records until 2001. The killer's escape was not a matter of luck. It was a textbook case of forensic failure. The absence of DNA evidence was the first hurdle. In 1989, the Portland lab lacked the technology to extract genetic material from decomposing tissue, and the tarp's lack of fingerprints left no physical trail. Detective James Carter, who led the initial investigation, noted in his 1989 report that the absence of biological evidence is a dead end, a phrase that would haunt the case for decades. The rope, dismissed as common household material, was later found in a 1993 inventory of Lang's garage, but its fibers were never matched to the tarp due to a clerical error in the lab's database. The hair strand, however, was the most glaring oversight. Lab technician Margaret O'Reilly's 1989 notes described it as uncommon, a misjudgment that stemmed from the lab's inability to analyze hair texture with the tools of the time. Lang's baldness, documented in a 1987 medical record, was never cross-referenced with the strand, despite his known condition. In 2001, a re-examination using scanning electron microscopy confirmed the hair's origin, but by then, Lang had died of a heart attack in 1998, leaving the case officially unsolved. A 1993 interview with Riverside Auto's former manager revealed Lang had purchased the tarp in 1988, but the Portland PD closed the lead, citing insufficient corroboration. The lack of DNA, the misfiled rope, and the overlooked hair strand created a perfect storm of systemic failure. Forensic science in the late 80s was still in its infancy. DNA profiling was rare, and hair analysis relied on outdated methods. Lang's alibi, bolstered by church records and a choir director's testimony, was never challenged despite the tarp's connection to his garage. The science of getting away with it, then, wasn't just about hiding, it was about exploiting the gaps in evidence collection. The killer didn't vanish. The system let him stay. But there was one detail that didn't make sense, and no one noticed it yet. Security footage from the church fundraiser, reviewed in 2012, showed Lang leaving the event 30 minutes before the stated end time, his silhouette blurred by the flicker of a dim hallway light. The footage was buried in a 1993 internal memo labeled irrelevant, its timestamp overlooked by investigators who assumed Lang's alibi was solid. A local librarian, Margaret Wren, who had dated Lang in the 1970s, recalled in a 2018 interview that he once told her, "The woods are full of stories. I collect them." She described how he'd return from his rural excursions with peculiar items, frayed ropes, rusted hardware, and plastic tarps, which he claimed were for art installations. Her account, filed in a 1993 cold case file, was dismissed as anecdotal by Detective James Carter, who noted in his report that Lang's interest in rural property is a quirk, not a motive. The Portland PD's 1993 case review included a redacted footnote. Lang's 1987 medical records indicate a history of obsessive-compulsive behaviors, including repetitive collection of inanimate objects. The note was flagged by Sergeant Elaine Torres, who wrote in her 1993 memo, "Why would a man with no criminal history hoard tarps and ropes? This needs deeper scrutiny." Her concerns were filed away, lost amid bureaucratic inertia. A 2001 audit of Lang's property revealed a hidden storage compartment beneath his garage floor, containing a stack of identical tarps, each marked with the faded logo of Riverside Auto. The discovery was never publicized, its existence buried in a sealed internal report. By the time the compartment was found, Lang had already died, his final days marked by erratic behavior. Neighbors recalled him pacing his property at night, muttering to himself about cleaning up messes. The science of his escape wasn't just about hiding, it was about burying evidence in plain sight, long before the world was ready to look. In 2010, a cold case unit at the Portland PD revisited Eleanor Hart's file, unearthing a 1989 interview with Lang's estranged sister, Margaret, who claimed he'd once confessed to killing someone who didn't deserve to live. The statement, deemed inadmissible hearsay at the time, was buried in a sealed internal report. Meanwhile, a forensic artist reconstructed Eleanor's face from a childhood photo, which was then matched to a composite sketch of a suspect seen near the crime scene, Lang's physical description, down to the faint scar above his left eyebrow. The match was 98% accurate, but the sketch had never been circulated. A breakthrough came in 2015, when a retired detective, now working as a consultant, noticed a discrepancy in the tarp's batch numbers. The Riverside Auto Shop had closed in 1987, but Lang's purchase receipt, found in a sealed envelope in his sister's attic, dated April 1st, 1989, listed the tarp's serial number. The number matched the one on the tarp found with Eleanor's body. The Portland PD reopened the case. But Lang had died in 1998, his will revealing a hidden trust fund tied to unresolved matters. What started as a minor detail about the tarp was about to become a massive revelation.